Hi everyone, it's Rosie Cornell. Welcome to my channel. You'll note still no introduction, still no pretty stuff. I will give the disclaimer because it's so important. This is not legal advice. If you have a legal issue, you've got to go and see a lawyer because they can look at your circumstances and what's happened and advise you the way that you need to be advised. Now, I have tried starting this video a few times, and anyone who knows me knows that I go off the reservation and I rant. So I'm going to try and make this video concise. So bear with me as I put the fetters on myself to see if I can just get through without giving you the spiel on everything. I'm going to try and not give you everything, including the kitchen sink. So there is a group of protesters in Perth. They are called the Umbrella People. And since December 2021, they have been gathering outside of Parliament House. I tell you, Government House, it's terrible. So Government House is where the governor lives, and Parliament House is where the rabble rule us at the moment. So they've been meeting outside of Government House, and they do a silent protest between 8 o'clock and I thought it was 9 o'clock, but some people are throwing out 10 o'clock. It's probably when the last of the stragglers leave, but the official time is between 8 and 9 o'clock. When Governor Beazley was in residence, he came out and spoke to them 3 times. At one stage, from the outset, they had a bugle player there playing the last post. That stopped after the arrest of the bugle player. Police actually arrested them. Cool, isn't it? Anyway, they also used to use the intercom that's at the gate at Government House to read out what they were doing there. And after some months, they were politely asked to stop it, and they did. A simple request was put forward, and they said, yep, not a problem, we'll do that. We won't touch the intercom again. You know what we're here for, so that's what we're here for. And then enter the new governor, who happens to be the former police commissioner come COVID commander, and suddenly police are showing up all the time and really harassing these people. It started escalating, and from my understanding, it wasn't Governor Beazley who asked the police to attend. I believe that was came from the government and the police commissioner, that the police would show up and have more of a police presence and start talking to people. And I am of the firm conviction, and I said it to a few people in other interviews and when I was asked to speak to some of the protesters about what they can do. I believe all of the police harassment has been about getting bail conditions put on people so that they can't go there. People weren't making applications in relation to bail, and when they did, they were kind of overridden by the system and what was going on. And there seems to have been a change now, which I'm going to talk about. But police would approach protesters and say, I have a reasonable belief that you have or are about to commit a crime, and then they come up with a crime. And every time somebody's told me what they're apparently being charged with, I'm there, but you're protesting. If you're protesting, which is a protected right, you're obviously not committing a crime. If your peaceful protest suddenly becomes violent, yes, then you're committing a crime. But if your peaceful protest remains peaceful, which these did, there was no smashing of anything, there was no interference with the public. They kept a clear pathway so that the public wasn't stopped from going about their daily life. these were obviously protests that are protected. And police started chatting them, and, the protesters would refuse to give their name and address. And so the police would charge them with failure to give their name and address. And then, the intimidation just kept escalating to the 2nd of January, where apparently a complaint had been made that, this person within Government House believes that she's being stalked. Which, technically, the stalking charge is quite broad. But, protesters, there's a hashtag standing, not stalking going around, and it's true. So I've mentioned a little bit of laws, so let me see if I can pull up where I've put them. Word has kindly minimised everywhere, and I've got a gazillion documents open again, obviously. So we've got that one. Let's pull this one down because I think that's where the other one was. Yeah, I think I can. I hid it. It wasn't Word at all. It was me. It was all me. I'm such a terrible person. Blaming that poor computer program when it was all me. Anyway, so police have been abusing their right to ask someone for the name and address. So if a police officer reasonably suspects a crime is being committed, they can ask you for your name and address, and you must give it. But if you are obviously not breaking the law, they don't have the right. They cannot demand you give them your identifying details, and you can say no. Now, when people have asked me for advice, I have said, you don't have to, but, path of least resistance, they can figure out who you are anyway. They know who you are. They've been watching these protests for months. They pretty much know who everybody is, and the few people that they don't know who they are, they can certainly find out. So then you sort of in the situation where I say, it's no skin off your nose, really, to just give them your name and address, and that de-escalates the situation. But if you've been charged with not giving your name and address, well, your defence is, I didn't have to give it because I wasn't breaking the law, and the police officer could not have had a reasonable suspicion that I was committing a crime or about to commit a crime because I've been protesting here for over a year, or, for however long it was at the time that these approaches were made. And protesting is a protected right. It's protected under the Australian Constitution. It's protected under the human rights. And it's protected in the Code Act Compilation Act 1913, which is the Western Australian Criminal Code. It's protected. Let's not kid ourselves. So let me read the section on, again, moving my documents around. So Section 75 of the Code Act Compilation Act. Oh, hang on. I'm not going to find it here because I've actually pulled up the total act. Such is life. My life's got to be simplified. I've got to figure out an easier way of traversing this. And I couldn't close the documents because I'm actually working. So that's the move on notice. Yes, found it. So Section 75 of the Criminal Code of Western Australia, it's in Chapter 10, and Chapter 10 has got offences against political liberty. And there's, the one section. It's section 75. Interfering with political liberty. Any person who by violence or by threats or intimidation of any kind hinders or interferes with the free exercise of any political right by another person is guilty of a crime and is liable to imprisonment for 3 years. Summary conviction penalty, imprisonment for 12 months and a fine of $12,000. And you will note there is nothing in there that says, oh, except for if you're a police officer, knock yourself out, you can do what you like. They can't. Police must follow this. So police are actually guilty of interfering with political liberty, and each police officer who has done it, each police officer who has approached a protester who is obviously a protester and said, oh, I have a reasonable suspicion you're about to commit a crime, we're calling BS on that. He knew, or she knew, no crime being committed, no crime about to be committed, nothing going on here other than a protected protest. So personally, I would like to see charges laid against all of the police officers, because I'm all about the rule of law, and the rule of law says the rule applies equally to everybody. And the police broke the law. They actually, instead of protecting the protesters, they've been harassing them. It's not a good look. Now, there are other offences that go around there. So as I said, you only have to give your name and address if the police have a reasonable suspicion about a crime and you're involved with it somehow, or you can help them with it and they need to know who you are. That doesn't apply to protesters, especially not ones that have done the same thing every day all that time, and they're obviously protesting, and once the protest is over, they go home. They leave the area. They get on with the rest of their day. They go to work. They do what they must. They're no longer protesting, so they don't hang around. And if they do hang around and talk, there isn't a law that says you cannot stop on a footpath to speak to someone you know, or someone you met, or someone who's asking you questions. There's further difficulties for police officers involved with this, and again, I personally would like to see them being charged. Now, the police isn't going to charge them, and we can't do a private prosecution in Western Australia, so I'm not sure how we would get the law to be actually applied, as in applied, but they are guilty of a few crimes, and I think if I were representing any of the protesters in court, I would raise these issues that, not only has there been, all of this harassment, which is only to stop the protests in the first place. This is to really chill the protest movement. This is to stop them. Any and all protests in the future won't go ahead because everybody's already scared in Western Australia. If these people get convicted of stalking, then no protest will ever happen again. And I always reckon that, those charge sheets aren't actually going to read, you've been charged with stalking. That's just the threat. And that's where the threats and intimidation comes in. But Section 133A is false prosecution commencing. Any person who knowingly signs a prosecution notice under the Criminal Procedure Act 2004, which in any material particular is to the knowledge false, is guilty of a crime and is liable to imprisonment for 7 years. And it says any person. Police in this instance are included in the any person. This is one of those lovely rule of law sections that applies equally to everybody. And those of you who don't know how criminal procedure works in Western Australia, a police officer who charges someone will end up initiating the police prosecution by doing the prosecution notice. So each charging officer who has come up with these charges to, they're only following orders, but they're guilty of the crime. They've signed the document. And if they haven't signed the document, it's highly irregular, but they've still got the people under charges. They've sent out the statement of material facts. They've laid it out and said, you're nothing but a criminal. And it's against the law, not allowed to do it. Now, I am particularly fond of Section 134, which is conspiracy to commence false prosecution, because I suspect there has been a little bit of conspiring between the government, the governor and the police force. Someone on high has been having a chat with others and they have come up with this particular way of dealing with the issue. Well, we can't legally stop them, but you know what? We can harass them and we can intimidate them and we can terrify them of the consequences. These people are law-abiding citizens that have always followed the law. They are citizens who are upright, fully, they've been engaged in their full citizen rights, where they're part of committees, doing things, they help the community, they do all sorts of positive things. They've contributed in their careers and now they're, facing criminal charges. That's a terrifying concept for your normal, ordinary citizen. No one wants to have criminal charges hanging over them. And I think there's a bit of a conspiracy going on to stop protests because it looks bad for the Premier to not be beloved by 100% of the population. Anyway, so conspiracy to commence a false prosecution. Any person who conspires with another to charge any person or cause any person to be charged with any offence, whether alleged to have been committed in Western Australia or elsewhere, knowing that such person is innocent of the alleged offence, or not believing him to be guilty of the alleged offence, is guilty of a crime. And that's any person. It doesn't matter if you're a police officer and, you have a quiet word with a police commissioner who's a little bit distressed because his wife's distraught that, these people are standing for some time addressing the office of the governor. It's a conspiracy. The minute that two people plot and scheme, it's a conspiracy. And then, it doesn't amount to conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. I mean, does it? I haven't totally looked at it, but it's kind of, it's got that smell to it, if you know what I mean. Any person who conspires with another to obstruct, prevent, pervert, or defeat the course of justice is guilty of a crime and is liable to imprisonment for 7 years. How many people have been found guilty of crimes in relation to any of the stuff that Mr. McGowan has brought in relation to the magic juice and controlling the threat? How many innocent people have had their lives destroyed by, some of these trumped up things? I don't know. It's something that I would like a lawyer smarter than me to look into. I think it's certainly a possibility. And then, of course, attempting to pervert the course of justice is a separate charge again. So it's, it's a bit of a problem. And this is just in relation to telling people that you think they're committing a crime and then charging them with them not giving you their name, address, you get charged with that. Then there's additional problems that get on top, where, the police have been abusing move-on orders. Now, those people who don't know what move-on orders are in Western Australia, the police may order on people who are suspects, or like you suspect them of committing a crime or hanging around about to commit a crime, or they're just unruly. And don't quote me on it, but I think that one arose because of the Northbridge issues that were there, where the drunks just wouldn't leave the area, and then they'd get into punch-ups, and some of that was really serious consequences for innocent bystanders who had drunks abuse them. So they came on with move-on orders, and the police loved them. And a move-on order, they can move you out of the area and stop you from going there up to 24 hours. And of course, anything that says up to 24 hours, a police officer is simply going to say 24 hours. There's not going to be any thought that, we should really use a bit of discretion and, maybe just move them on for the next 5 hours. It'll be fine. So they've been abusing the move-on orders as well. And as soon as you come back to the area after having been given a move-on order, you're breaking the law. And then they get you for that. So you've got to challenge the move-on order. And it's just more of a scheme to stop protests. So the move-on orders are being used illegitimately and illegally. In my opinion, it's illegal to use a move-on order to break up a protest. Absolutely. Protests are a protected right, and move-on orders are designed to get you out of the area. So I believe any police officer who has ever issued a move-on order to a protester is guilty of a crime, because they're guilty under Section 75. They're interfering with people's political rights, and it's not something that they should do. So, these charges probably need to be laid. The police isn't going to do it. I doubt the CCC is going to look into it if you report it. I know that people who have complained to police have got the stock standard. Oh, well, we've looked at it and nothing to see here. So, are we really going to leave the fox in charge of the hen house? What options, what alternatives do Western Australians have? We don't seem to have much wiggle room on anything. Our rights are gone and no one cares. There's no redress. So I did want to look into stalking. Have I taken the stalking charge somewhere? Yes, I do have stalking here. So the really egregious charge, in my opinion, is when they dreamt up this charge of stalking. Now, apparently the governor's wife made a complaint, and I would refer you back to the conspiracy to commence a false prosecution, because I think there's a real problem there, because there is no way that anybody at Government House, after all this time, is not aware that this protest is on every day during this time. It's a protest that's a protected right. There can be no one who thinks, oh my God, they are there and it's about me. These people are addressing the office of the governor. It's the governor they want to address. I suspect most of them have got no idea about any of the family circumstances of the person who is the governor. I doubt any of them know or care about anything personal. So for the governor's wife to take this personally and say, oh my God, they're stalking me, I think that is a bridge way too far. It's just no. You don't get there. Stalking is a really, really broad thing. It's really broad. Let me read it to you, and you tell me if it's not far too easy to charge someone with stalking. So stalking is section 338E. That's a capital E. 1. A person who pursues another person with intent to intimidate that person or a third person is guilty of a crime and is liable: A, where the offence is committed in circumstances of aggravation, to imprisonment for 8 years, and B, in any other case, to imprisonment for 3 years. And an alternative offence is section 338E2, a summary conviction penalty in a case in which subsection 1A applies, imprisonment for 2 years and a fine of $24,000, and in a case to which subsection 1B applies, imprisonment for 18 months and a fine of $18,000. And a 338E subsection 2, a person who pursues another person in a manner that could reasonably be expected to intimidate, and that does in fact intimidate, that person or a third person is guilty of a simple offence, and penalty is imprisonment for 12 months and a fine of $12,000. And 3, it is a defence to a charge under this section to prove that the accused person acted with lawful authority. So you can't charge a police officer with stalking if they are actually investigating you. You know, they're allowed to watch your house. You're not allowed to watch theirs. But, you know, everybody thinks that pursues means that you are following them around. And that's not what it means. You can go to the same spot in front of someone's house and you will be considered to be stalking. The reason it doesn't apply is because they are not there to intimidate or threaten anybody. The protesters are there protesting, which is a political right. So the stalking charge falls away, and I think there was a conspiracy in that. Anyway, I think I've spoken long enough about this. This is my reasoning on it. My understanding is that when the Irish couple who were arrested and charged with not giving their name and address, they ended up not being charged for stalking, as far as I know. When they had their appearance at the Magistrates Court, the bail conditions were removed, which is excellent. It's the first time I've heard of a protester actually having the bail conditions removed. So that's promising, and we'll see how we go. I would still say, you know, plead not guilty to all of these charges. Get yourself a good lawyer and prove that as a protester you had the protected right, and any charges that arose out of you protesting is a beat up by the police. It's a lie. They've commenced a false prosecution and all charges must be dismissed. Personal opinion, there are people who have done things so that the charges are a legitimate crime. It should still be considered as a low-level offence because people think they're doing the right thing and they're protesting for the right reason, and it's a protected right. And it's very, very emotional when your government takes away all of your rights and you can't even get anybody to listen. If we were in any other time and our government had taken this view, NATO, or, well, not NATO, but, you know, the international forces, the Americans would have come in and saved us from our tyranny. And it doesn't happen because the whole world's gone mad and going to hell in a handbasket. That last bit's my personal opinion. I've got puppies going off, so you can probably hear them. She's got a real problem. I better go and sort it out. I'm not going to edit this. It is not going to get any better if I keep plodding at it. And I'll see you in the next video. Subscribe if you like. I'd love to get these channels growing and, you know, get the word out there. But what the hey, it's yeah, it's been embarrassing still. But have a great day, night, wherever you are, whenever you're watching this. And, you know, ignorance of the law is no defense. So I'm here to explain some of the law for you. Catch you around. See ya.